And we are back on the Flex. We're here with Mr. Wesley Howell from the Elections Office. Welcome, Mr. Wesley.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm excellent. Thank you.
This is your first time on the Flex, so extra special welcome to you. And you come in your first time on the last show at the end of the season.
Perfectly timed.
Perfectly timed. Okay, so we don't really know anything about elections and voting. So what's the process of voting like?
Well, first off, you have to be registered to vote. So at this point, we're actually encouraging folks to register. And if they're already registered, to check their address and occupation and names. And if they have any changes, we can update those. If you're under 18, but you will be 18 in May of next year, we can register you now.
Okay.
And we just encourage you to do that. There's information on our website about registration.
Okay, so where do you go to register?
You can register with any of the registering officers. Their telephone numbers are online. The forms are online. Or you can register in person at the elections office on Smith Road Center.
Okay, so there is lots of apathy among young people. Why should they take part in the upcoming elections?
You know, that's an excellent question. I think young people ought to step up and pay attention. Everything that happens with elections and with elected government affects young people. So this program is paid for by funds that have been voted on by the cabinet and the LA. Those are people that were elected by folks to represent them. So if you don't have a say at the table when it comes to electing, you literally don't have a say in how the government runs and what government programs are put in place to affect you. I heard somebody talking about exams and scholarships. Scholarships is another thing that the Ministry of Education funds, and literally anything that the government spends is an appropriation law that the LA passes. So
Wow.
your vote drives straight into policy setting and what the government does and how it affects you going forward.
Yeah, it directly affects us. A lot of us, like I said before, we don't know anything
We don't
about
know
voting. So
voting and politics and all of that
exactly.
stuff,
So you're definitely educating us. Okay, so you said we can go online in order to register.
Yeah.
And where do you just email the form, or do you have to go drop it off in person?
So currently you drop it off in person because you have to bring in some additional information like your status paper or your birth certificate and some others. We're hoping that we'll have some amendments to the law that will make that a little bit more streamlined so we can, with your permission, request those documents from the government agencies that have them so that you don't have to bring them to us. So we're looking forward to that. In the meantime, it's a bit of a paper-based system where you bring the documents to us and then you get on the list.
Okay.
It takes about 3 months for that to happen, so we want people to do that in advance of the election.
Yeah, but you're getting to the paperless system. Surely,
Absolutely.
hopefully.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hopefully.
So
Okay.
what are the benefits of being a registered elector?
Well, I mean, first off, you don't have a say in casting a vote either for the elections or a referendum. So a referendum is a poll of citizens on issues that might be affecting the entire country. So when we change the Constitution, that was a referendum to say how the government and the country would be governed. That brought in things like Bill of Rights and others. So referendums are a big say. That's also part of the elections. If you're not registered, you can't also vote in a by-election. That's in the event that we have a seat vacant during the 4 years. So we advise folks not to wait until right before the next general election. At any point in time, we could go for a full election or a by-election, which is 1 or 2 seats, depending on what's vacant at the time.
Wow. So you don't only have one chance to vote. If there is a by-election, you do have another chance to vote as well.
Absolutely.
So how big is your team at the elections office?
So we're about 10 or 12 folks now. It varies depending on what tasks we have going on, but we will gear up. And on election day, there'll be about 350 people working in the
that's a
polling
lot.
stations, in the counting stations, working in the command center, doing logistics on the road. So it's a tremendous exercise. We were expecting, 16,000 or so people to come out to vote on one day, and we have to get it right. There's no do-over, so folks have to be trained and ready to work on that day.
Yeah, how would you prepare for that day?
It's a lot of training. We have the benefit of having staff who've worked with elections office for many years. I myself worked for about 20 years on different parts of the elections process. So those people come back, they need very little training. For the new people coming in, they get more advanced training, more in-depth training, hands-on role play, but they're ready to go when the call comes.
Okay, so where are the couple hundred people coming from?
Well, we have lists of folks who served before we contacted them. Probably 90% of them will serve again. We also made a call for volunteers and got overwhelming support from that. So those people will be interviewed and assessed and will be brought on to fill the additional posts that we have. Our first set of training sessions actually starts on Monday, and that's for returning officers. Those are the folks who go out on nominations day and registered candidates, and then they start doing things like postal ballots, which is key for young people. If you go off to college, you can still vote. Even if you're overseas, you can request a ballot. We'll send it to you. You fill it out and send it back, and we'll count that vote on election day.
Okay, so how can young people get involved?
You can volunteer. We work closely with the cadets. You can also contact the office. We want to encourage as many young people as possible to inform themselves about what's going on. This time around for the general elections, we're doing one person, one vote, single member constituencies. So there's a change, and we just want to be able to get that message out to not only young people but people across the Cayman Islands.
And what's the age limit for the young people that can volunteer?
Typically, the volunteer workers on polling day are 18 and over, but we have other positions within the office that we can use young people in before, during, and after the election. So if you're willing to volunteer, then hit us up on our Facebook page. We're on web, Twitter, Instagram. So you can
You're
reach
everywhere.
us. Absolutely.
Okay, so even if you're not old enough to vote, you can get involved.
Absolutely. I mean, we're encouraging with young people participate in youth parliament and debating issues around the legislative assembly, around government and elections in general.
Yeah. So what's the voting process like for someone who's never voted before?
Yeah.
What can I expect?
Well, you can expect leading up to the election, increased advertising, increased messaging from candidates and parties. Giving information out as to what they're going to do, what makes them different, what makes them your preferred candidate. Leading up to election day, will also be messaging based on what is proper conduct for candidates, what to expect on election day, how to cast your vote and make it count. That's the major change this year, though. For the election coming up in May 2017, is that if you're in Georgetown, Bordentown, West Bay, or Cayman Brac, a Little Cayman, instead of voting for multiple persons, you'd have one vote for one person who's running in the area in which you live. So West Bay would have 4 separate areas, single member districts within West Bay, and each person would be able to vote for one person within there. And that's new. Last election, you could vote for up to 4 people if you were in West Bay, up to 6 if you were in Georgetown, 4 for Bordentown, and 2 for Cayman Brac and Little Cayman.
So what major difference is that system going to cause to the results?
That's been an issue of major debate amongst the existing candidates, potential candidates. The argument behind making it that way is that the ability to vote for multiple people, while some people can only vote for one, wasn't a very fair representation for individuals. But with that said, it is a change, one which we have a role to play in educating folks about the change. Mr. Steve Matfield actually said our existing system of voting goes back 184 years. So we're changing something that's been in place for a really long time. So we're gearing up for education around that.
I wonder if most people are for the change or not.
There was a referendum on that particular item. It carried with a majority of the people coming out to vote on that day voted for it, all except for the district of West Bay. It was defeated in West Bay, but it was a national vote, so the national count was the bearing one. It was a non-binding referendum, so it was an indication to the government of what the people wanted. So
Okay.
there again, if you're a voter, you have a say, and putting your views forward.
And it's obviously best to have a say in the country that you live in.
Absolutely.
Okay, so where are some of the polling stations located, and about how many polling stations are you going to have?
We'll have 19 polling divisions. Those will have different number of polling stations, but places like prep school in West Bay, the John A. Cumber Primary School, we tend to use school halls or church halls, areas where we're centrally located within the electoral district that people can get to on election day.
Okay, so can you tell us where some of those polling stations are?
So West Bay, John A. Cumber, we use West Bay United Church, we use the Agricultural Pavilion in Boddentown, we use Boddentown Primary School, we use East End Civic Center. So there's a list of those. With the new district boundaries coming in for the single member voting system, we'll have some changes to those, but we'll publish those in good time.
Wow. Okay, so how long do you have to like count the votes before the results are published?
Well, last election we went through until about 10 a.m. the following morning for the last votes to come in. Now that we're having single member electoral districts and we have more persons to count, fewer votes, because the numbers are closer to about 1,100 per single member district. We expect to be done long before midnight, so that's our goal, is to have credible results, trustworthy results that everybody agrees on before midnight.
And how do you ensure that your results are credible?
We have the last elections, we had international observers, we have domestic observers. We're actually not even allowed to open the polls unless we have agents. Those are representative of the candidates there in the room watching everything from the start of the polls to the close of the polls.
Wow.
So we have full transparency of the process and really good controls. Those were scrutinized by the international observers, and very little changes were recommended to our actual process. So really solid processes that we're building on going forward. You come out and vote, your vote will be counted, assuming that you mark your ballot correctly.
Okay, so we're not cheating any votes over here.
No,
it's done properly and it's done clearly. Okay, so there's no cost to vote.
None at all.
You just need to go on the website, register, prove that you are indeed a Caymanian, and then show up to a polling station.
Yeah, so there'll be lots of messaging around where you need to go and what you need to do when you get there. We'll also be launching in July what we call our voter verification process. So because the change is so drastic this time with the single member districts, we're coming around with a fact sheet listing frequently asked questions and showing where your boundaries are, where your polling station will be, and also taking the opportunity to check your information against our existing list. So there's no there haven't been any requirement to reproduce the list. We've started on an ongoing registration and ongoing change. So we know that some people have moved and they hadn't changed their information, or their occupation has changed and they hadn't done that. So we're going to go door to door and give people the opportunity to do that.
So are you going to need volunteers to do that
Absolutely,
as well?
absolutely. And they'll be trained in our processes and how we do that. And we look forward to getting the list as accurate as we can leading up to the elections.
Wow, you guys are very organized. So what do you do?
Word of the week.
What do you do during the terms that, like, the years that you don't have voting?
Yeah, so we do a lot of training and development. We do registration year round, so every quarter we publish the list, because again, we never know when we're going to have an early election or a snap election, or we're going to have a referendum that's been called. Folks that have been trained help us recommend law changes and others.
Okay.
So yeah, there's work going on in off season as well.
Definitely, I would assume so, else you wouldn't be able to be so organized and orchestrate the voting so well after each term. Okay, so you already said some of the benefits of being a registered voter, but just clarify those benefits again for the people of the Cayman Islands.
Absolutely.
Also, to register, do you have to pay or is it free?
It's a free it's a free process, and many will say that's your ultimate democratic right, is to have your say on who is going to represent you in the legislative and in the government. So it's a free process. Information is readily available. You can reach out to us. telephone, website, all the social media stuff.
Facebook, Twitter.
Absolutely,
Guys.
absolutely.
Okay, so once again, what are some of the benefits of being a registered voter?
So your benefit is that you get to have your say. You get to influence who represents your single member district, your country, and who represents your views, and somebody that you can go to with issues to be raised. The government sets the policies, they set the direction for the country, so your say is critically important.
Wow, so you definitely have a say in the way your country runs.
Totally.
If you are a registered voter.
Yep, and if you're not, you don't.
Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Wesley, for coming on and educating us on the voting process.
Thank
Do you
you.
have any final comments or shout outs?
And I just want to say thanks to all the folks that have been out already hitting the pavement registering individuals, including young people. Just want to say thanks to the young people for listening, and we look forward to seeing you on the register so that you can have a say.
All right, thank you. We'll take our third music break.
Our next song is from Zendaya. Here is Something New.